all we're trying to do is drive awareness. We either want a better educated patient so that the doctor or the provider doesn't have to say the same thing every time, or we want a patient that's more aware. So either it's a total win-win. Better educated patient usually means that the doctor or the provider is going to be teed up to have a better consult, which hopefully leads to a higher conversion rate, or patient's more aware of other things. And we want to give the patient the power to drive. We don't want them, we have ads playing on TVs, but we know that the patient in today's world, they pay extra to skip ads, right? They pay the $13 a month to YouTube to not watch ads. So what we want to do is subtly and subliminally market to the patient as they're driving. So as they're consuming content, let's market to that patient.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Technology of Beauty, where I have the opportunity to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. And today is no exception. Today in the studio is Tyler Terry, who is the Director of Sales for TouchMD. And he came all the way down from Utah, correct?
Yep, all the way down from beautiful St. George, southern Utah.
Yeah, well, welcome to the studio. Welcome to Manhattan Beach. I understand you and the family came down a few days ago.
Yep, that's true. We came down on Thursday, had to take the girls. I have two little girls, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they love the beach. So any opportunity we get to go to the beach, we take it.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll have to talk when we're done with this. I've got a few boogie boards and skateboards and bikes for you, so if you want to just kind of enjoy the Strand.
Okay, we'll probably take you up on it.
Okay,
so.
Good. Well, let's get started with where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah, born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. Lived there until I was about 13, and then my family moved to southern Utah. And my dad, he actually traveled back and forth and drove 3 hours each way. He was an iron worker in Las Vegas. So went to high school there, went to college at Southern Utah University, which is where I met my wife.
And what was your major?
Communications.
And you were there for the whole 4 years at Southern Utah?
About 5 years.
5 years, yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling. So then what happened after that?
Yeah, so my wife and I got married, so we were college sweethearts, and then TouchMD was actually acquired back in 2014, and I had to move up to Northern California. I covered the Pacific Northwest, and so we moved up, lived in Folsom, right outside of Sacramento.
Sure.
We were there for about 5 years. Until the original founders purchased TouchMD back and acquired the company back, and in which we were able to move back to southern Utah. So we had our first little girl, and then we moved back to St. George. Built a house right before COVID, so we got lucky and moved back, February 2020.
Okay.
And then, this month marks my 11-year anniversary at TouchMD.
That's amazing. So you're back with Carrie and the gang? Back
with Carrie and the gang, which has been amazing. They've always taken me under their wing. I actually started off in the mailroom. So I was, setting appointments for the sales reps. This is back in 2012. I just got done doing an internship at the Walt Disney Company. Did that for about a year.
Where were you there?
So I was actually down here in Southern California. And I always wanted to either manage a luxury resort, maybe a Disney resort or a famous resort, or go into sales. And so I ended up networking when I got back to Utah and landed at TouchMD. Essentially, again, in the mailroom, did a little bit of everything. I was everything from ripping up the carpet to remodel, to setting appointments for the sales reps, to back then there wasn't an app store, so I used to have to use a wizard and install the software, and always try to, put a bug in their ear to tell them that I would love an opportunity to sell. And it took me about a year, and they finally gave me an opportunity. I remember Jason Whitesides, he's one of the co-founders.
Sure.
He's a big Giants fan. I'm a big Dodger fan. And usually he'd Skype me. Skype was a big thing back then, but he'd Skype me and, talk some smack about baseball. And I thought, when he Skyped me, he was like, "Hey, Ty, can you come to my office?" And I'm like, "Oh, he's probably going to have me go wash his truck or something," And he's like, "So you think you can sell?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Jason, I would love for the opportunity to sell." And from there is history. 10 years later, here we are, and they've given me every opportunity to grow and to build and to dream up new features. A lot of our new features I've helped build and dream and direct, so it's been fun.
I bet. So now do you manage the sales force?
Yeah, so I manage our sales team. Essentially, we have about 7 sales reps on our team.
That was my next question. For the whole country?
Yeah. So we're still lean and mean. We used to
that's-
actually fly out. So if you would have set up an appointment with us maybe 5 years ago, if you set up something through our website, we'd actually fly out and spend a day. We'd pack up this big Pelican suitcase and we'd have this huge computer, and we'd come into your office, bring in lunch, and give you a presentation on TouchMD. But about fall of 2019, Kerry Smith, one of the co-founders, he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey Ty, do you think you can try to figure out how to do virtual demos to save on expenses?"
Right.
And we essentially perfected the virtual demo pre-COVID, which was amazing. So a huge blessing for the company.
No kidding. Wow. Is that fortuitous?
Yeah.
So throughout COVID, you were selling still, but on Zoom and other virtual vehicles?
Yeah. So our studios, just like you have this beautiful studio here, our studios are very next level. We try to make it as in-person as we can. So we have a very beautiful, intelligent setup. And we do our best to, make you feel like you can touch and taste the software as if you were in person. So we're always willing to go in person if we need to, but we try to start with a Zoom virtual demo.
Right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you actually do? What does the technology do?
Yeah, so TouchMD, it's super unique. I call it the Tesla or the Maserati or the Rivian of software. So it's the most beautiful software in the industry. And obviously I'm biased, right? I've been doing it for 11 years. But if you were to look at it today, you fall in love. You fall in love with the user interface, the UI. You fall in love with the fact that it actually displays everything that you offer. So we believe that just as every practice should have a website, that every practice should have a TouchMD system. And just as every website is uniquely branded, tailored, white labeled, if you offer cool sculpting or if you offer Volux or whatever services you offer, it's beautifully displayed on TouchMD. And then there's 2 things that we do that we're best in class at, and we're really in a class of our own, which would be every practice should have a sales aid, a digital sales aid to give a consult. And so TouchMD is the sales aid. So it's going to have your favorite illustrations, your favorite before and after photos. It gives you drawing tools. It gives you all these beautiful tools to give a consult in a very high level. So it makes you look very buttoned up and polished. And then it's also an in-practice marketing tool. So, practices, a lot of times they have TVs and, those loops are playing on the TVs. But with TouchMD, we have that. But something that we have that's probably 100 times better than that would be this beautiful digital menu. So I call it the Amazon-like experience. So while the patient's in the room, and this could be done by any practice, while the patient's in the room, imagine Ashley's here today for Botox, we'll call it. Let's just say I'm the staff member and I go into the room, I grab the iPad and I'm gonna log in the patient. And then I'm gonna pull up Botox and she's still in the waiting room. So now when I take her from the waiting room into the consult room, I'm gonna hand her the iPad and then I'm gonna say something like this. I'll say, "Hey Ashley, this is our new technology that we've invested in to enhance your experience today. While you're waiting, the doctor would like you to go ahead and press play and watch a video on Botox. You can look at some before and afters. You can sign in or sign up for Ally. Or if you have time, you see that little back button? You can actually hit that and you can browse through everything that we offer. We'll be with you shortly." So I'll pause. Essentially, it's this beautiful menu. It's the same idea as if you go to a restaurant. And even if you go to the same restaurant, you might order the same thing. Most of the time, you'll still take a menu. And with this, of course, most patients are sold on Botox. But our stats, and this is out of over 40 million patients, our stats say that 60% of the time, patients will continue to consume what they're here for. 40% of the time, they'll hit the back button and look at everything that's offered. And then the practice can see in real time before they walk in, oh, Ashley's here for Botox, but she's actually looking at Emsculpt. And you can see that before you walk into the room.
Right. So you can kind of look into her brain, right? You
Yeah.
get a feel for that. That's
Totally.
fabulous.
And her experience is being enhanced. And all we're trying to do is drive awareness. We either want a better educated patient so that the doctor or the provider doesn't have to say the same thing every time, or we want a patient that's more aware. So either it's a total win-win. Better educated patient usually means that the doctor or the provider is going to be teed up to have a better consult, which hopefully leads to a higher conversion rate, or patients more aware of other things. But typically, every single product page has 3 elements. So I call it the Amazon-like experience. So on Amazon, if I'm looking at, I like golf. If I'm looking at a Tiger Woods hat, Amazon's going to feed me, the consumer, everything that I need to feel confident and comfortable to drop that product into my cart. They're going to say, hey, do you want to read reviews? Great. Do you want to watch a video? Great. Do you want to read about it? Great. And so we're not Amazon, but we know that those same things apply in aesthetics at the point of care with the patient, and we want to give the patient the power to drive. We don't want them, we have ads playing on TVs, but we know that the patient in today's world, they pay extra to skip ads, right? They pay the $13 a month to YouTube to not watch ads. So what we want to do is subtly and subliminally market to the patient as they're driving. So as they're consuming content, let's market to that patient.
And that content that they're consuming, is that video content?
Yeah, so it's videos to watch, before and afters to look at, and then testimonials or reviews. So we integrate with different companies, whether it's Real Self or Real Patient Ratings or Google. Those will actually be embedded on the product page, even if they offer Cherry. So patients here today for Emsculpt, I can hold the iPad, watch something about Emsculpt, look at the before and afters, which is usually the number one thing they want to do. But then I can also see, they have patient financing options. They offer Care Credit. They offer Patient Fi. They offer Cherry. And so we integrate with Patient Fi, which is amazing. And so that Patient Fi link can actually be on every single product page or all the high ticket product pages, and patients can learn.
And where does the video content come from?
So it comes from both the manufacturer, the industry. So, we partner with Galdermas of the world, all of the different companies. I like to say we have about 95% of what's out there. And if it falls into the 5% of what we don't have, maybe a new manufacturer just launched something, it takes us usually about 2 to 3 weeks to get it. And we're very motivated. So once we get the content, we have it in the TouchMD brand box. And then all of our practices have the ability to drop that brand into their TouchMD system. So now patients can consume the content. So instead of, flip books and brochures, they're going to use TouchMD. So no more, typically let's just say Cyton. So if it's the BBL Halo combo, which is popular. So when I got that, and my wife, we were up in El Dorado Hills, California, this med spa, they were giving us a consult, both of us at the same time, on BBL Halo, and she pulled out this 3-ring binder. So Cyton sends practices 3-ring binders to give a consult. Allergan sends practices these beautiful, cool sculpting flip books. And all these companies have their way of how they think you should give a consult. And then with TouchMD, all we're doing is standardizing the consult.
So the content comes from the corporation, the provider corporation. So in that case, Cyton gives you the content?
Correct. Plus, if you had a video of you talking or your before and afters, we'll put those on. So it could be a combination of the two, or it could just be your videos and your before and afters. Or a lot of practices that are just starting up, they'll start with the stock content. And as they start to build it, they'll actually add that in.
Okay. Now, what about if they have questions about, say, procedures like a breast augmentation or a tummy tuck or something? It's not a non-surgical. Do you have that kind of content?
We do. So we partner with the Aesthetic Society, and we have, for anybody that's part of ASAPS, we can actually take content that comes directly from ASAPS and put that on TouchMD, or we can put, their content, or we've actually curated and created some of our own content. So we have breast aug illustrations and breast aug videos that come out of the box ready to go. And of course, if they have their own, they can do that as well.
So do you cover all the aesthetic surgical operations right now if I were to buy TouchMD?
Yeah. So rhinoplasty, we have, very next level illustrations. And so that's included. Tummy tuck, we've got it.
And you mentioned the aesthetic society. That's the, when they have their video content, what's that called? It's online, I know.
I got to think of the name, but we literally have the beauty, it's something beauty, but we have that specific content out of the box ready to go. So they'd have to verify that they're part of the society, and if they are, then we'll activate the content.
Okay, that makes sense.
But even like ASPS, so something TouchMD does as well as consents, and so we'll activate the 2017 version of consents or the 2020 version of consents. So.
Do you go outside of the aesthetics industry, like cosmetic dentistry or ophthalmology, or are there other areas that you are working in besides aesthetics?
Yeah,
Tell
it's a
us
great
about
question.
that.
Yeah, so dental's actually been a really big hit with TouchMD. So any cosmetic dentistry practice, we have content that's already curated and created for them. So really anybody that's doing elective medicine or cash pay medicine would be a potential fit to use TouchMD. And it kind of comes back to the two concepts of, hey, do I need a tool to give a consult and to craft a better experience, or do I need a tool to educate my patients at the point of care? Then they'd be a great fit. But we do have an ophthalmology version as well. So typically it's really popular for refractive, so cataract, LASIK. So if they're looking at, hey, this is the standard lens that I get that's paid for by the government, and this is the premium lens, we actually have tools and technologies to show them the difference. So they can actually slide their finger back and forth and see, okay, now I actually can't see at this distance, but I can see at this distance. But if I pay the $5,000 and get the toric IOL, I'll actually get to see wherever I'm at.
Okay. So what other areas are you in besides ophthalmology and aesthetics?
Really at this point, ophthalmology, dental, cosmetic dentistry, and then aesthetics. Those would be like our main points. Aesthetics would be, 95% of our business.
Okay.
But there's a nice crossover with ophthalmology, and there's a nice crossover with dentistry, which is great.
Are you anticipating going to any other cash-based areas in the future? Are there other ones on the plan?
Yeah, I would say orthopedics. That will probably be one of our next ventures. Really, med spas have been, it used to be probably 90% of our business was plastic derm, right? And then 10% is kind of other. But now it's probably about 60% med spa and then 40% everything else. So TouchMD has actually been a major hit in the med spa world.
Wow. Now, you were recently acquired by Nextech, right?
Yes, we were.
What's that all about?
Yeah, so we've actually been integrated with Nextech since 2012. And it's actually cool. October 2012 was our integration, and then October 2022 is when they actually acquired us. So 10 years to the month.
When you say integrated, what does that look like? What does that mean to me?
Yeah, so if you were to have Nextech and TouchMD, every patient that's in Nextech will automatically be in TouchMD. So we eliminate dual entry.
Okay.
And then anytime you take a picture within TouchMD, that instantly saves back into Nextech. And anytime a patient signs a consent, that also goes back into Nextech.
Okay.
And one of the other major components of TouchMD and why we believe we're best in class at photography would be because we integrate with your Canfields and your Chrysalics. We also have a best-in-class photo app and photo experience, but there's really two routes when you think of photography. And I've seen a major shift. So when I first started 11 years ago, or really 10 years ago selling, most plastic surgeons wanted to use a Canon or a Nikon DSLR or mirrorless camera.
Okay.
When I went to the Aesthetic Society meeting just a few months ago, I would say well over 50% wanted to use an iPad, which was a huge difference. But what's really cool is we actually have an exclusive partnership with Canon now, so you can use a Canon camera and you can sync it with the iPad. So imagine you have this tripod, and then you have the iPad that's attached to the tripod, and then you have the camera, right? And it's in your photo room.
Right.
In real time, the iPad becomes the viewfinder, and it's syncing with that camera. So a pain point for you or for any of your colleagues is you take that high-res photo, and the pain point isn't that you can't take a consistent photo. The pain point is getting the photo in front of the patient or to the patient, because it saves to the SD card, and then you need to make sure it's HIPAA compliant, and you want to be secure. So with this, the picture, every time you take it on that Canon camera, it goes right into TouchMD. So it doesn't save to the camera, it doesn't save to the iPad, it goes right to the cloud. And then we integrate with about 40 different systems. Obviously we're a part of Nextech, but we're still agnostic. So we're still integrating with 30 plus other EMR and PMs in the market. So that photo can now also go into your EMR system.
Regardless, doesn't have to be a Nextech
Correct.
EMR?
Correct. Yep.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So Nextech obviously has been a huge. It's been a huge blessing to TouchMD because they're really helping us be and thrive in all the ways that we were struggling prior to the acquisition. So they're really giving us the power and the freedom to take what we do to the next level, to be able to attend all the shows, to be able to develop at light speed. We developed pretty quickly because when you're a small company, you can move, but the way that we can move now is unparalleled to before. And then of course, the integration will only get better and better with Nextech. I can't say what those future integration points will be, but I know that in the future, it'll be above and beyond just photos and consents. So, hopefully practices will get two routes of you absolutely need TouchMD. It's its own thing. And then you do need your EMR practice management, but I'm sure there will be, extra capabilities of having Nextech plus TouchMD.
So did you push any of this information to the prospective patient before they actually come into the office? You were mentioning how it happens in the office. You had a catchy term for that, that intra-office experience.
The Amazon-like experience.
Yeah. And I was just sitting here thinking, do you push any of this stuff to the patient before they show up in the office?
Yeah, so practices get their own patient portal, but then they also get their own patient app. And with the app experience, patients can download that on their iPhone or on their Android device. And so essentially there's three reasons why a patient would download the app. Number one, far and away, is to see their photos. So they want to see their before and afters. They want to be able to track their progress. So their photos are there on the app. The second reason would be pre and post instructions. So their pre-op, post-op instructions, or any homework that the practice wants to assign, that's going to be there on the app. And then the third reason would be for consents. So they can actually sign their consents on the app and it sends back. But the beauty is, so the Trojan horse for the practice to the patient would be, hey, your pictures are there. So now the likelihood of them downloading the app goes up. So 78% of patients will actually download the app and log in within the first 24 hours of the consult, as long as they have at least one photo in their account. And then of those 78% of patients, they log in 5 times within 30 days. But what's cool, there's two things that are really cool. One would be, imagine, so we talked about like the advertisements that play on the TV. Imagine if those same ads could play on that app. So about a third of the real estate at the top of that patient app is going to be this little video player, and it's going to be streaming the practice's advertisements. And it's not annoying to the patient because the volume's off. So if they want to listen, they just click the volume on button and they can learn about that Allergan new product that just came out, maybe Velux or whatever. And they can pause the ad, they can skip the ad, they can heart the ad, all while they're consuming their before and afters, signing their consents, reviewing their pre and post, browsing through all of the services that they can see in the office on the iPad. And a huge pain point that practices have today is patients are texting or emailing their photos. And so with a patient app, the patient can take a HIPAA-compliant selfie that sends to the practice.
And so when they get on this app, how do they do that actually? Is it a separate app for the practice? Is it directed to the practice, or is it back to TouchMD, or how does that work?
Amazing question. So as of today, it's called My TouchMD. So they download the My TouchMD app.
Okay.
It was built like that from the beginning because we know that we're multi-specialty. TouchMD is.
Oh, right.
So a patient that's an aesthetic patient can download the same app and log in within their same username and password, and then they choose which door they want to enter. Do they want to enter the plastic surgeon's door, the med spa door, the derm, the ophthalmology, or the dentist, right? If they're connected to that many. Now, only about 3% of patients are connected to more than one account, but when that happens, it's convenient for the patient. In the future, so I'm a big Dodger fan, so if you download the MLB app and you choose your favorite team, that logo becomes the app logo.
Right.
So like on my phone, it says, LA in blue and white.
Okay.
So in the future, what we're testing is giving the app logo to the practice. Now, it would still say underneath that little icon, it would still say My TouchMD, but, and this isn't, for sure, but something that we're testing is giving that logo to the practice. Now, when a patient clicks on the app as of today, and they log in, it's all about the practice. So it's all about, their before and afters, their videos, and of course the practice can't see which other practices the patient is connected to.
Right. And they log on with their name, or is that automatically there?
Yeah, so just their username, which would be their email address, and then their password that they create.
Okay. So there's a password to get in. How does it remain HIPAA compliant?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons and how it remains HIPAA compliant. Of course, in the office, patients can't jump into other patient files. So typically, when a patient goes into a practice and you're using Nextech, they don't really know that you're using Nextech, right? That's kind of behind the scenes.
Right, sure.
But with TouchMD, they do get to touch it, taste it, feel it, and experience it. So what happens is the provider or the staff member logs in the patient. They type in their 4-digit PIN or their 8-character password. And then once that patient's logged in, they can't jump into another patient's account. It's all locked. Now, the other thing is they turn on what's called guided access. So guided access is amazing, not just for aesthetic practices, but if you have kids or grandkids, you can lock your kids or grandkids into the Netflix or the Disney Plus app, right? So that same technology, we lock the app so the patient can't escape it and jump into something else. So they're holding the iPad, they can't log into other accounts. And then, of course, there's a lot of back-end, language that keeps it HIPAA compliant, but essentially their username is their email address, and they're going to have a secure password. And it is two-factor, so 2FA, two-factor authentication as well.
And what's that?
Yeah,
I think I know, but I think that's what I have to do at this other place I work. But
yeah. So essentially, you have your password,
right?
And then with two-factor authentication, essentially it'll send you a text message, and then once that text message pops up, it gives you a code, and you type in that code, and it verifies that you're that person.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of times, if you have an iPhone, it's just like use this code, and you just click it on top of your your numbers. So,
well, that's cool. Well, it's been great to talk to you about it, but I'm curious what the future holds. If you look in your crystal ball, there's so many things you've been doing, and we talked about venturing outside of aesthetics. It sounds like you're already doing that.
Yeah.
But aside from that, either in the aesthetics industry or specifically into the whole Next Tech partnership that you have, or just what you're developing, and you and the other guys.
Yeah.
Now that you have it again back and you guys are now managing it, what's the future look like to you?
Yeah, so the future would be more branding for the practice. So there's a lot of different things that we're working on. So we want more branding for each practice for their TouchMD systems to make them even more unique.
Okay.
That's the first.
Okay.
Second would be intelligent marketing. So giving the practice the power to intelligently market to the patient at the point of care. And the point of care isn't just in the office. The point of care would be on the patient portal and patient app before they come in the office, on that iPad, on that Windows device, on that TV, and then of course when they go home. So how do we intelligently market to the patient based on what they're looking at or what we assume they're going to look at? So being able to feed the patient relevant content. So if I'm continuing to look at body sculpting services, well, how do we make an intelligent recommendation to Tyler that, hey, you know what, you're looking at this, but you actually might be a perfect fit for True Sculpt, or you might be a perfect fit actually for a tummy tuck. So being able to intelligently market to the patient in a very subliminal and subtle way, very similar to, if you're on Amazon or if you're on Pinterest, same technology, in the back end where it's making intelligent recommendations. When you look at a product and it says you also might like these, that is a future point for TouchMD. The other would be in photography. So we just came out with our so TouchMD Snap is the photo app, and it has grid lines and ghosting features. With Snap Pro, you now have sequencing. And with sequencing, so if you imagine, Cool Sculpting, I've been referring Cool Sculpting a lot, but Cool Sculpting has a photo dial in the Cool Sculpting room, right? So if I'm in the Cool Sculpting photo room and I'm getting ready to take my picture, typically the staff member is going to direct me to turn my feet on the ones, on the twos, on the threes, right?
Yeah.
So with the sequencing, it essentially aligns with the photo dial. So as the patient is turning their feet and turning their body, the sequences will change and they'll flip. So now you can create a custom sequence per service. So for a tummy tuck or for breast aug, you can have a custom photo sequence for that specific product, procedure, or service. So now you still want the dial, but if you didn't have the dial, TouchMD Snap Pro has it dialed in with the grid lines and the ghosting and the video. But really, outside of that would be we're prepping images. So one of the biggest pain points in a practice today always comes down to photos. It's either capturing photos, displaying photos, or delivering photos. And so as of today, and also in the future, we'll continue to develop, but we can actually push photos directly from TouchMD to social, to TikTok or to Instagram. You can watermark, you can put your logo, you can put the golden ratio grid line on top of the face, so you can talk about why you're contouring, where you're contouring. You can use advanced slider tools to showcase and impress your patients. But a lot of these things that TouchMD does, they're really just universal truths. Like you should have a tool to take photos. And TouchMD does it best with our photo app and with our partnership with Canon. And then, hey, if you use Vizia, Vectra, Chrysalix, we integrate, or Mir, we integrate. You should have a sales aid to give a consult, because you don't want to have 5 different ways of giving a consult. You should have one consistent way, and that's TouchMD. And then you should have an in-practice marketing tool. You should be marketing in your practice. You shouldn't just have pop-ups. You shouldn't just have a loop on your TV. You should be marketing digitally and letting patients drive, choose, and select. So universal truths that TouchMD brings to life through all these different features.
And I would imagine you're going to need more video content, because the ASAPs and ASPS content is somewhat antiquated, to be candid.
Yeah.
And as you talk about getting smarter with the patient journey and patient experience, it sounds to me like you're going to need additional content. Are you already working on that video content in terms of actors and so forth conveying these messages?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be graphics, or how are you going to convey this information to them?
It's a combination. It's a combination of content that we're producing. So, whether we're having the actors or actresses, or if we're producing animation, which we produced animation, or if we're partnering with the Aesthetic Society or ASPS, or of course when we're partnering with the different brands. The best case is always when the practice provides their video. That always resonates the most to a patient.
Right.
And so we always go for that, number one. And if not, then of course we partner with the brands and the societies and try to bring it to life. But yeah, it is, and these products are changing on a quarterly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis.
Sure.
So for us, it's always a challenge to stay up to date, because there's a new model that MERS is using, right? Or whoever.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're up to date with that is super important.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you, Tyler.
Thank you so much, Grant.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Of course.
Is there any last few things you want to share with us?
Well, honestly, it's just been a pleasure being here. I told you this before we started, but I've listened to all of the podcast episodes. When I found out that I had a chance to do this with you, I was super excited. I jumped on it right away. Of course, like we said, I took my family, took my girls, so that's super exciting. I would say the last thing to share would just be with just some advice for practices when they're looking at software. This is just some universal advice. To a lot of times when you're looking at software, you trust the software sales rep to a certain extent, right? And of course you want to read reviews, but there's not that many reviews online to look at software. So one of my challenges to practices is to essentially look for the things, look for a software that you'll get excited to use. I know it comes down to price a lot of times, but look for something that you'll actually use every day and you'll get excited to use every day. Because if you choose something just based on price, whether it's or just the experience, but if you choose it based on just price, you're likely to not use it every day. So make sure you use something that you enjoy and you're excited to use. Also, make sure that you understand license agreements. Make sure you understand how many users you get, how much cloud space you get, how much support you get. Because for me, just doing this, I've probably given a demo 50,000 times, so many times, too many times. My wife says I'm demoing in my sleep sometimes. So for me, I get feedback just because we integrate with so many companies that, Tyler, I wish I would have known that I only got this much support. Now I've spent 50 hours setting this up. Or, Tyler, I wish I would have known that there's a limit to licenses, or that I can't contact anybody, I can't get any help, or I'm locked into this agreement. So just be very careful when you're looking at the different software that you're thinking about bringing on. Make sure you ask those questions on licenses, users, cloud space, training, support. And then again, make sure that you choose something that you're excited about. So really, that should be your compass when you're choosing software.
That sounds like great advice, regardless of the technology we're looking at. That's fantastic advice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming down and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, of
we
course.
wish you nothing but the best, and can't wait to see what all you're developing in partnership with Nextech.
Thank you
That's
so much. Last thing I'll say is we just started a TouchMD University podcast, so you can actually check that out. Just started it maybe a few months ago.
Cool.
And then, of course, if you're interested in TouchMD, just go to our website, and we actually offer same-day demos, which is pretty cool.
I love it. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us in this week's podcast, The Technology of Beauty, where I have the opportunity to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. As you saw, today was no exception. We look forward to seeing you each and every Tuesday. Take care.